With this video short, I'm going to just talk about some of the differences between extensive and intensive properties of compounds or elements. So extensive properties depend on the amount that's actually physically present in front of you. Okay, so things like this is the mass. So if you were in the chemistry lab and you have, a compound that you need to weigh out, you get a vial of it and you have a scupula, and you start scooping it out and putting it on the balance beam. You can change the amount of mass that's in front of you, right? So mass is an example of an extensive property. It depends on how much matter is actually physically present. Volume, if you had like a gallon of water and you were pouring some into a cup, right, you can change that amount that's present. So volume is another a property that is extensive, which depends on the amount that's present. Heat. Heat is extensive. If we think about, if you held like one penny, if you put like a penny on the stove and heated it up and you put that penny in your hand, it would only have a certain amount of heat. But if you heated up about 50 pennies and put it in your hand, boy, that would be even hotter, right? So the heat depends on the amount of matter that's present in front of you. On the flip side, intensive properties are properties that do not depend on the amount of matter in front of you. So even if you have one tiny little grain of it, or if you have a big whole chunk of whatever it is we're looking at, it has the same property. So things that are intensive, examples to think about is maybe like the color, the luster, the hardness of a mineral or of a element from the periodic table. The temperature, right? So it doesn't matter how much you have, just the element sitting out maybe at room temperature here is going to have the same temperature. Okay? The molecular weight is how much, the amount of grams per mole that compound or element weighs. And that doesn't change if you have a little sugar cube amount sitting in front of you or if you have a whole cupful of it sitting in front of you. The molecular weight of a compound or element is an intensive property. So is density. Density tells you the mass per volume. So how much that compound or liquid weighs, the mass grams per every volume, per every 1 milliliter. So density is also an intensive property. It doesn't matter if I pour out 1 milliliter of water or 1 gallon of water, the density of water is still going to be 1 gram per milliliter, period. Melting point and boiling point is also another thing that it doesn't matter how much you have in front of you. The melting point of ice will always be at 0 degrees Celsius and the boiling point of water will always be at 100 degrees Celsius. Doesn't matter if my ice cube is super small or really big. Doesn't matter if I'm boiling 1 cup of water or 4 quarts of water. The boiling point doesn't change. So those are just some examples of intensive properties and differentiating between extensive and intensive properties.